The giant meeting room fell silent as Ambassador Zeltharian stepped forward. His 3 eyes blinked nervously as he looked at the human leaders gathered around the table. The alien's gray skin shimmered under the bright lights of the United Nations Hall. "Humans of Earth," he said, his translator device converting his clicks and whistles into English. "My people need your help. We are dying." President Allison Grant leaned forward in her chair. She was a tall woman with short brown hair who had led the United States through 2 terms of relative peace. "Please explain the situation in detail, Ambassador." Zeltharian pressed a button on his wrist device. A hologram appeared above the table showing a star map of the galaxy. 17 different colored areas lit up across 3 spiral arms. "This is the Galactic Federation. 17 species living together in peace for over 2,000 years. We have technology you cannot yet imagine. Our ships can cross the galaxy in days. We can build planets. We can move stars." His voice became lower. "And yet we are being destroyed." The hologram changed to show strange, shifting shapes that looked like crystal formations. They moved like clouds but had solid edges that caught the light. "The Void Swarm," Zeltharian said. "Silicon-based life forms that consume everything in their path. They turn living worlds into dead rock in weeks. They absorb energy and grow, stronger from our weapons." Admiral Gary Peterson, head of Earth's Space Forces, studied the images carefully. "How many worlds have been lost?" 23 so far, including 3 with billions of people." The alien's voice cracked. "Our most. Advanced fleets tried to stop them. They failed. The Ardelian warships, the pride of our Federation, were torn apart like paper." The room grew even quieter as videos played showing massive alien battleships being swarmed by the crystal entities. The ships fired what looked like energy weapons, but the beams were absorbed by the creatures, making them grow larger. "Why come to us?" asked Secretary of Defense William Cooper. "Earth hasn't even sent people beyond Mars yet. Our technology must seem primitive to you." Zeltharian's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "We have been watching your species for centuries. You were not ready for contact because of your—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Aggressive tendencies. But now those tendencies may save us all." He brought up new images showing human history, battles, wars, but also moments of incredible bravery and innovation. "No species in the Federation thinks like humans do. You find ways to win when you should lose. You use simple solutions for complex problems. You are unpredictable." President Grant exchanged looks with her advisors. "You've been spying on us?" "Observing," the alien corrected. "And now we need your help." Admiral Peterson cleared his throat. "Our best fleet is currently in the outer solar system near Neptune. It would take weeks to recall them and prepare them for whatever mission you have in mind." Ambassador Zeltharian shook his head, a human gesture he had clearly learned for this meeting. "We do not have weeks. The Void Swarm has entered the Sirius system. If they consume those planets, they will gain enough mass to split into 2 swarms. Then nothing will stop them from eventually reaching Earth. We do have 1 fleet available," said Captain Samantha Miller, speaking up from her position near the back of the room. All eyes turned to her. Captain Miller was not supposed to be in this meeting. As commander of Training Fleet 7, she had been in Washington to argue against the decommissioning of her ships when the aliens arrived. Now she stepped forward, her confidence making up for her relatively low rank. "Training Fleet 7 is ready to deploy immediately," she said. 5 ships, fully crewed, all systems operational." Admiral Peterson frowned. "Captain, those ships are outdated. They're scheduled to be scrapped next month, and your crew consists of Academy graduates who have never seen real combat. With respect, sir, my ships work just fine. They're not the newest, but they're reliable. And my crew may be young, but they're the best graduates from their classes." Miller stood tall, her blue uniform crisp despite the late hour. "More importantly, we're ready now." President Grant studied Captain Miller carefully. "What makes you think your training fleet could succeed where the Federation's advanced warships failed?" Miller looked at the alien ambassador. "Because we think differently. We haven't been taught to rely on superior technology. We've been taught to adapt and overcome." She pointed to the hologram showing the Void Swarm. These creatures absorb energy weapons and grow stronger, correct? Zeltharian nodded. Yes. All our conventional weapons only make them more powerful. Then we don't use conventional weapons, Miller said simply. My crew includes some of the most creative problem solvers in the service. Lieutenant Paul Howard can build anything from spare parts. Ensign Maria Sanchez broke 3 unbreakable alien codes during training exercises. Dr. Olivia Bennett wrote her thesis on theoretical silicon-based life forms. Admiral Peterson sighed. Captain, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is far beyond a training mission. Sir, with respect, what choice do we have? Miller asked. We wait for the main fleet, and risk the swarm splitting in 2, or we send what we have now and at least try to buy some time. President Grant stood up. The room fell silent again. Ambassador Zeltharian, how soon could you transport Captain Miller's fleet to the Sirius system? Our carrier ships could have them there within 6 Earth hours, the alien replied. Grant nodded, her decision made. Admiral Peterson prepared Training Fleet 7 for immediate deployment. Peterson knew better than to argue with the President in front of aliens. Yes, Madam President. Ambassador Zeltharian looked at the fleet manifest on his datapad, his expression hard to read but his posture showing clear doubt. These are your weakest vessels? No, President Grant replied firmly. These are our most unpredictable ones, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. 3 hours later, Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the USS Dauntless, her flagship. The aging battlecruiser had seen better days, but its systems were functional and its crew was ready. All ships report ready for transport, Captain, said Lieutenant Commander Frank Watson, her first officer. Miller nodded. Signal the Federation carrier that we're prepared for transit. Through the view screen, she could see the massive alien vessel that would carry them faster than light to the battle zone. It dwarfed her entire fleet, a reminder of just how advanced the Federation was compared to humanity. Do you think we can really make a difference, Captain? Watson asked quietly. Miller watched as her other 4 ships moved into formation. The MIM, USS Venture, USS Discovery, USS Providence, and USS Horizon, old ships with young, brilliant crews. I don't know, she admitted. But I do know that those aliens have tried everything they know and it hasn't worked. Now it's time to try something they don't know. A bright light enveloped the 5 human ships as the Federation carrier activated its transport field. Training Fleet 7, humanity's weakest fleet, disappeared from Earth orbit, bound for a battle that would change the course of galactic history. Captain Samantha Miller gathered her officers in the meeting room of the USS Dauntless. The ship shook slightly as it traveled through what the aliens called fold space. Outside the viewports, strange colors swirled that human eyes had never seen before. We'll reach the Sirius system in 30 minutes, Miller said. So let's be clear about what we're facing. She activated the holographic display showing the void swarm creatures. The shifting crystal formations looked beautiful but deadly. These silicon-based life forms consume planets. They absorb energy weapons and grow stronger from them. The Federation's most advanced ships couldn't stop them. Miller looked around the table. Any ideas? Lieutenant Paul Howard raised his hand. The ship's engineer was a stocky man with perpetually oil-stained hands. If they absorb energy, what? About kinetic weapons? Good old-fashioned bullets and missiles? Dr. Olivia Bennett shook her head. Her dark, curly hair was pulled back in a tight bun. The Federation report says they tried that. The creature's outer shells are harder than diamond. Physical projectiles just bounce off. What about their biology? Asked Lieutenant Commander Nathan Harris, the young physics genius. All creatures have weaknesses. Dr. Bennett brought up her datapad. They're silicon-based, not carbon-based like us. They communicate through electromagnetic pulses. They seem to function as a collective, like a hive mind. Can we disrupt their communication? Asked Captain Jack Moore from the USS Venture. He was a former Marine with a shaved head and stern expression. Ensign Maria Sanchez, the communications officer, nodded excitedly. Maybe. I've been studying the pulse patterns they use. They're complex but follow mathematical rules. Lieutenant, Commander Frank Watson frowned. But how does that help us stop them from eating planets? Captain Miller looked thoughtful. What if we don't need to destroy them? What if we just need to talk to them? The room fell silent. Then Lieutenant Kevin Wright from the Venture laughed. Talk to them? They're eating planets. Maybe they don't. No, they're harming sentient beings. Miller replied. Dr. Bennett, is it possible they don't recognize other life forms as intelligent? Dr. Bennett's eyes widened. It's possible. Silicon-based life would perceive the universe very differently than we do. They might see carbon-based life as we might see bacteria. So our job isn't to fight them, but to make first contact, Miller said firmly. Ensign Sanchez, I want you working on translating their pulse patterns. See if you can find a way to communicate. Lieutenant Commander Watson looked concerned. Captain, with all due respect, the Federation sent us to stop these things, not chat with them. The Federation sent us because they're desperate, Miller replied. All their attempts to destroy the swarm have failed. We need to try something completely different. As the meeting ended, they felt the ship slow down. Lieutenant, Commander Watson checked his console. We're approaching the Sirius system, Captain. All hands to stations, Miller ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with. On the bridge, the crew watched as they exited fold space. The view screen showed the Sirius star system. Its bright blue-white star illuminated 7 planets. But something was wrong with the third planet. Instead of a solid sphere, it seemed to be breaking apart, surrounded by a cloud of crystal formations. The Void Swarm, Dr. Bennett whispered. They're consuming the planet right now. Federation ships are pulling back, reported Lieutenant Eric Johnson from the USS Horizon, his voice coming through the communication system. Miller wasn't surprised. They're expecting us to engage while they observe from a safe distance. Orders, Captain? Watson asked. Miller studied the screen. Maintain formation. No aggressive moves. Ensign Sanchez, begin recording all electromagnetic pulses from the swarm. I want to know what they're saying to each other. From the USS Discovery, Dr. Bennett's voice came through. Captain, I'm getting amazing readings. These creatures are beautiful. Their molecular structure is unlike anything we've seen before. Beautiful or not, they're heading our way, Captain Moore reported from the Venture. Permission to ready weapons? Negative, Miller replied firmly. No weapons. Let's not make the same mistake the Federation did. The crystal formations had noticed the human ships. Dozens of them broke away from the planet and moved toward Training Fleet 7. They ranged in size from small car-sized crystals to massive structures larger than the ships themselves. They're scanning us, Ensign Sanchez reported. The electromagnetic pulses just increased by 300%. Are they preparing to attack? Watson asked nervously. Sanchez shook her head. I don't think so. The patterns are different from what the Federation recorded during battles. This feels more like curiosity. On the USS Discovery, Dr. Bennett and Lieutenant Commander Harris were analyzing the data streaming in. Look at these patterns, Harris said. They're solving complex equations as they communicate. These aren't mindless destroyers. They're intelligent. Bennett nodded. The pulses contain mathematical sequences. Prime numbers, geometric progressions, it's like they speak in math. Back on the Dauntless, Ensign Sanchez had been running the communication patterns through her algorithms. Captain, I think I can approximate their language. It's based on mathematical principles. Miller made her decision. Send them a message, something simple but clearly artificial. Start with prime numbers. Sanchez programmed the ship's communication array to emit electromagnetic pulses in the pattern of the first 10 prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29. The effect was immediate. The advancing crystal formations stopped moving. They rearranged themselves into new patterns, geometric shapes that seemed to pulse with inner light. They're responding, Sanchez exclaimed. They're sending back the next 10 prime numbers. Miller felt a surge of hope. Send them something more complex, a mathematical proof. Sanchez worked with Harris to transmit the Pythagorean theorem as a series of pulses. The swarm's response came quickly. They sent back an alternative proof of the same theorem. They understand, Dr. Bennett said, her voice filled with wonder. We're actually communicating with them. For the next hour, the humans and the void swarm exchanged increasingly complex mathematical communications. The Federation ships cautiously moved closer to observe the unprecedented interaction. Ambassador Zeltharian's voice came through on the command channel. What are you doing? How are you stopping them without weapons? We're not stopping them, Miller replied. We're talking to them. Lieutenant Howard had been quiet, thinking. Now he spoke up. Captain, I have an idea. If these creatures need silicon to survive, maybe we could offer them alternatives. There are plenty of uninhabited planets rich in silicon. Captain Susan Rodriguez from the USS Providence joined in. My ship has detailed star charts of this sector. There are 3 uninhabited planets within range that have high silicon content. So we offer them a trade, Miller said, the plan forming in her mind. We show them where to find what they need without destroying worlds with intelligent life. Lieutenant, Commander Harris was skeptical. How do we explain intelligent life to crystalline beings that experience reality totally differently than we do? Dr. Bennett had been thinking about this problem. We could show them the difference between worlds with complex information patterns like civilizations and worlds with simple raw resources. Mathematically speaking, one is more ordered than the other. Miller nodded. Ensign Sanchez, work with Dr. Bennett and Lieutenant Commander Harris. See if you can formulate this idea into their mathematical language. As Sanchez began working on the new message, the bridge crew watched the crystal formations warily. The void swarm remained in place, still sending mathematical communications but not advancing. Do you think this will really work? Watson asked quietly. Miller watched the beautiful, deadly crystals floating in space. I don't know. But destroying them didn't work. Maybe understanding them will. The next step would be the hardest, convincing beings who consumed planets for breakfast that some worlds should be left alone. But for the first time since the void swarm appeared, there was hope. The bridge of the USS Dauntless was quiet, except for the soft beeping of instruments. Everyone watched as Ensign Maria Sanchez worked with Dr. Bennett and Lieutenant Commander Harris to create their message to the void swarm. I think we're ready, Sanchez said finally. We've created a mathematical model that shows the difference between planets with complex information systems, like civilizations, and uninhabited planets rich in resources. Captain Miller nodded. Send it. The ship's communication array sent out a complex series of electromagnetic pulses. The crystal formations of the void swarm shifted and rearranged in response. They're processing it, Dr. Bennett said, her voice coming through the speakers from the USS Discovery. The way they're moving suggests they're sharing the information throughout their collective. Lieutenant Howard had been studying the swarm through the view screen. If they're really a collective intelligence, does that mean we're talking to one being or many? Both, I think, Dr. Bennett replied. Like cells in a body, they're individual units but also part of a greater whole. They're responding, Sanchez announced. The computer began translating the incoming pulses into visual data. The main screen, filled with mathematical symbols and diagrams. At first it seemed random, but Harris quickly saw the pattern. They're asking why the distinction matters, he explained. They don't understand why we care about the difference between planets. Dr. Bennett thought for a moment. We need to explain the concept of harm. Show them that destroying worlds with intelligent life causes suffering. How do you explain suffering? To crystals? Lieutenant Commander Watson asked skeptically. Captain Susan Rodriguez from the USS Providence had an idea. Information loss. Show them that destroying complex information systems results in permanent data loss that can never be recovered. Dr. Bennett nodded excitedly. Yes. To an information-based entity, that concept should make sense. They worked quickly to create a new mathematical model. This one showed how destroying a civilized world resulted in the permanent loss of unique data patterns that had taken billions of years to develop naturally. When they sent the message, the response came faster than before. The crystal formations rearranged dramatically, some breaking apart and reforming in new patterns. I think we surprised them, Sanchez said. They're agitated. Miller tensed. Agitated could be dangerous. All ships maintain position. After several minutes, a new message came from the swarm. Harris analyzed it with growing excitement. They're asking if they've been causing permanent information loss, he translated. I think they didn't know. They saw planets as resources, not as information repositories. Captain Jack Moore from the USS Venture sounded doubtful. Are we supposed to believe they've been destroying worlds by accident? Dr. Bennett responded. To them, it might be like us eating plants. We don't think about plant suffering when we harvest crops. They didn't recognize other life forms as conscious entities with information worth preserving. Miller considered this. Ensign Sanchez, send them the data on uninhabited silicon-rich planets from Captain Rodriguez's star charts. Show them they can get what they need without causing information loss. The swarm received the new information and began a flurry of communication among themselves. The crystal formations danced and shifted in complex patterns that the humans couldn't interpret. Ambassador Zeltharian's voice came through on the command channel. What's happening? Our sensors show increased activity in the swarm. We're negotiating, Miller explained. We've shown them alternative food sources and explained why inhabited worlds should be avoided. The alien ambassador sounded stunned. Negotiating? With planet eaters? With an intelligent species that didn't know it was causing harm? Miller corrected. On the USS Providence, Lieutenant Daniel Clark had been analyzing the swarm's consumption patterns. Captain Rodriguez, I found something interesting. The way they process silicon is inefficient. They waste about 40% of the available energy. Rodriguez relayed this information to Miller. We might be able to offer them more than just new locations. We could help them extract resources more efficiently. Miller nodded. Add that to the proposal. Sanchez worked with Clark to create a mathematical model, showing a more efficient extraction process for silicon. They sent it to the swarm as part of their offering. The response was immediate. The crystal formations began moving in what almost looked like excitement. Their return message contained complex equations that Harris took several minutes to analyze. They're asking for more details on the extraction process, he reported. And I think they're apologizing for the information loss they've caused. Ambassador Zeltharian couldn't believe what he was hearing. Apologizing? These creatures have destroyed 23 worlds. Because they didn't understand what they were doing, Dr. Bennett insisted. They're silicon-based life forms with a completely different perception of reality. They didn't recognize carbon-based life as conscious. For the next several hours, the human fleet exchanged more and more complex information with the Void Swarm. Lieutenant Laura White from the USS Horizon used her perfect memory to create detailed maps of uninhabited silicon-rich systems throughout the galaxy that the swarm could safely harvest. Lieutenant Kevin Wright from the USS Venture, drawing on his gaming experience, developed a mathematical model for optimal harvesting routes between these systems that would keep the swarm away from populated areas. Slowly, a plan took shape. The swarm would leave Federation space and follow the routes to the silicon-rich uninhabited worlds. In exchange, humans would continue to share technological improvements for silicon processing. But how do we know they'll keep their word? Ambassador, Zeltharian asked during a conference call with all ship captains. Captain Miller had been thinking about this problem. We need to establish ongoing communication, regular exchanges of scientific and mathematical knowledge. Lieutenant Eric Johnson, from the USS Horizon, suggested we could set up automated relay stations along their route. Keep the conversation going even when we're not physically present. Dr. Bennett nodded. Yes, and schedule regular check-ins. Make it beneficial for them to maintain contact with us. Captain Miller looked at the ambassador on the screen. This isn't just about stopping them from eating planets. It's about establishing a relationship with a new intelligent species. Lieutenant Howard had another thought. If they're as intelligent as they seem, they could become valuable allies. Their understanding of physics and mathematics is beyond anything we've seen. Ambassador Zeltharian's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought in his species. In 17,000 years of Federation history, we have never resolved A conflict this way, we always fought or fled, never talked. Miller smiled slightly. Sometimes the best solution isn't to destroy your enemy, it's to turn them into a friend. The final proposal was sent to the Void Swarm. The humans waited tensely as the crystal formations processed the information. Their response came as a series of pulses that formed into a single, elegant mathematical equation. Ensign Sanchez looked up from her console, her face bright with amazement. They agree. They'll leave Federation space and follow our suggested routes. The bridge crew of the USS Dauntless broke into applause and cheers. Similar celebrations could be heard over the communication channels from the other 4 ships. But Captain Miller remained focused. This is just the beginning. Now we need to make sure they keep their word, and that we keep ours. The Void Swarm began to move, pulling away from the partially consumed planet and gathering into a more organized formation. They were preparing to leave the system, headed for the first uninhabited silicon-rich world on the route Lieutenant White had mapped out. As they watched the beautiful and terrifying crystal formations depart, Lieutenant Commander Watson turned to Miller. "Do you think anyone back on Earth will believe we talked the Planet Eaters into becoming our pen pals?" Miller smiled. "Probably not, but that's why we're out here, to do the impossible." 3 days had passed since the Void Swarm agreed to leave Federation space. The human fleet followed at a safe distance, monitoring their progress toward the first uninhabited silicon-rich world. Captain Samantha Miller had been invited aboard the Federation flagship for a meeting with the alien leaders. The Federation Council chamber was massive, designed to accommodate beings of many different sizes and shapes. Miller felt small as she stood before the 17 representatives of the Galactic Federation. Chancellor Mrelvax, a tall being with blue skin and 6 arms, spoke first. "Captain Miller, the Federation owes you and your crew a debt we can never repay. You have saved countless lives." Miller nodded respectfully. "My crew deserves the credit." Each of them contributed vital ideas to the solution. Ambassador Zeltharian clicked his mandibles. "When we asked Earth for help, we expected warriors with powerful weapons. Instead, you sent teachers and diplomats in old ships. We sent problem solvers," Miller corrected gently. "People trained to think differently." A representative from a gaseous species floated forward in their containment field. "We do not understand how you knew to communicate rather than fight. Our greatest minds never considered this approach." Miller thought about this. In human history, we've often mistaken the unknown for the enemy. We've learned, sometimes painfully, that understanding must come before judgment. The Federation Council members murmured among themselves. Chancellor Mrelvax raised all 6 hands for silence. "Captain Miller, we would like to offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Federation. Your species has proven its value." Miller was surprised by the offer. "That's very generous, Chancellor, but I don't have the authority to accept. This decision must be made by Earth's leaders." "Of course," the Chancellor agreed. "But there is another matter we wish to discuss. The communication relay stations you proposed for maintaining contact with the Void Swarm will require ongoing management. We would like to offer humans this responsibility." Miller understood what they were really saying. The Federation was afraid of the swarm and wanted humans to handle the dangerous job of keeping them peaceful. "We would be happy to take the lead on this project," she said carefully. "But we would need Federation support and resources." Back on the USS Dauntless, Lieutenant Paul Howard was working with Dr. Olivia Bennett on designs for the communication relay stations. They sat surrounded by holographic displays showing various technical schematics. "The stations need to be self-repairing," Howard said, adjusting one of the designs. "We won't be able to fix them if they break down in distant systems." Dr. Bennett nodded. "And they need to be able to translate new mathematical concepts. The swarm's language is evolving as they learn from us." Lieutenant Commander Nathan Harris joined them carrying a data pad. "I've been analyzing the information exchanges with the swarm. They've shared some fascinating insights about quantum physics that contradict our current theories." Howard looked up. "Anything useful?" Harris grinned. "How about a more efficient method of energy extraction that could revolutionize our power systems?" On the USS Venture, Captain Jack Moore was having a different conversation with his weapons officer, Lieutenant Kevin Wright. "I still don't trust them," Moore said bluntly. "These things ate 23 planets. What happens when they get hungry again and decide our deal isn't worth keeping?" Wright had been unusually quiet since their encounter with the swarm. "Now," he said, "you know, in the games I play, the most dangerous enemies are the ones you never try to understand. Once you understand their motivations, you can predict their actions. This isn't a game, Lieutenant." "No, sir. It's actually simpler than a game. The swarm needs silicon. We're showing them where to get it without hurting anyone. As long as we keep providing value to them, they'll keep the agreement." On the USS Providence, Captain Susan Rodriguez was meeting with Chief Petty Officer Daniel Clark. They were reviewing the efficiency of the silicon extraction method they had shared with the swarm. "According to these readings, they've already implemented our process," Clark said, looking impressed. "Their efficiency has improved by 37%. Rodriguez smiled. "Good. The more valuable our information is to them, the more likely they are to maintain the relationship." Lieutenant Laura White entered with a new star chart. "Captain, I've identified another 12 uninhabited silicon-rich systems beyond the initial route. This could keep the swarm fed for centuries without coming near populated areas." On the USS Horizon, Lieutenant Eric Johnson was piloting the small scout ship alongside the massive crystal formations of the Void Swarm. He kept a respectful distance but stayed close enough to observe their behavior. "They're beautiful in a strange way," he commented to Ensign Maria Sanchez, who had transferred to the Horizon to continue her communication work with the swarm. Sanchez nodded. "They're sending regular updates on their status. They seem excited about reaching the first mining world." Johnson raised an eyebrow. "Excited? Can they feel emotions?" "I don't know if they experience emotions the way we do," Sanchez replied. "But their communication patterns show variations that suggest something similar to anticipation or curiosity." After 2 more days of travel, the fleet approached the first uninhabited silicon-rich world. It was a rocky planet with no atmosphere, seemingly worthless to carbon-based life. But to the Void Swarm, it was a feast. The crystal formations spread out around the planet, their structures glowing with energy as they prepared to begin harvesting. But first they sent a message to the human fleet. Sanchez translated it on the main communication channel that linked all 5 human ships. "They're asking if this planet contains any complex information systems they should be aware of. They want to make sure they're not causing harm." Captain Miller felt a surge of pride. "Tell them the planet is uninhabited and they are free to harvest it. Ask if they would be willing to share data on their harvesting process so we can learn from them." The swarm agreed readily. As they began to consume the planet's silicon resources, they transmitted detailed information about their process. Dr. Bennett, Lieutenant Howard, and Lieutenant Commander Harris worked together to analyze the data. "This is amazing," Howard said after several hours. "Their molecular manipulation techniques could revolutionize our manufacturing processes." Harris nodded. "And their understanding of quantum field theory is decades ahead of our best scientists." Ambassador Zeltharian watched the exchange of information with all 3 of his eyes wide open. "You have turned our greatest enemy into a teacher," he said to Captain Miller. "This is unprecedented." Miller observed the swarm's beautiful crystal patterns as they efficiently harvested the planet's resources. Sometimes the best victory isn't destroying your opponent. It's finding a way to coexist. The Federation ships that had been observing from a distance slowly moved closer, their fear of the swarm gradually being replaced by cautious curiosity. "Do you think this peace will last?" Ambassador Zeltharian asked. Miller thought about human history, filled with wars but also with unexpected alliances and friendships. "Peace isn't a destination, Ambassador. It's a continuous journey that requires effort from all sides. But yes, I think this is a good beginning." As the Void Swarm consumed the uninhabited planet, they continued to share scientific knowledge with the humans. And the humans, with their unique perspective, continued to find new ways to bridge the gap between 2 fundamentally different forms of intelligence. The Federation had asked for warriors and received teachers instead, and somehow that had made all the difference. 6 months had passed since the encounter with the Void Swarm. The USS Dauntless led Training Fleet 7 back toward Earth, escorted by 3 massive Federation ships. Captain Samantha Miller stood on the bridge, watching the blue-green planet grow, larger on the view screen. "Home looks different now," Lieutenant Commander Frank Watson said quietly. Miller nodded. "Everything looks different after what we've seen." The past 6 months had been busy. After the swarm successfully harvested the first uninhabited planet, they had moved on to the next one on their planned route. The human fleet had helped establish 7 communication relay stations along the way, ensuring continuous contact between the swarm, humanity, and the Federation. The scientific exchange had been even more valuable than anyone expected. The swarm's understanding of physics had already helped human scientists develop new energy systems. In return, humans had shared more efficient harvesting methods that helped the swarm collect resources with less waste. "Incoming transmission from Earth," Ensign Maria Sanchez announced. "It's President Grant." The president's face appeared on the main screen. She looked both tired and excited. "Captain Miller, welcome home. Earth is ready to give you and your crew the hero's welcome you deserve." Miller smiled. "Thank you, Madam President, but we were just doing our job." "You did more than your job. You changed the course of galactic history." President Grant looked solemn. "The Federation ambassadors arrived last week. They've offered humanity full membership and a special role as mediators." "I heard about the offer," Miller replied. "What's your decision?" "We're accepting, with conditions. We want to maintain Earth's independence while working with the Federation, and we want you to lead our new diplomatic corps." Miller was stunned. "Me? I'm just a ship captain." President Grant shook her head. "You're the person who showed the galaxy a new way to solve problems. The Federation doesn't understand how you did it. They want to learn from us now." As Training Fleet 7 entered Earth orbit, they were greeted by a swarm of smaller vessels, not dangerous crystal formations. This time, but ships filled with cheering humans. News broadcasts around the world showed crowds gathering to welcome home the fleet that had saved the galaxy. The USS Discovery docked first. Dr. Olivia Bennett and Lieutenant Commander Nathan Harris stepped onto Earth soil carrying data drives filled with new scientific knowledge from the swarm. "The scientific community will be analyzing this for decades," Bennett told the waiting reporters. "The swarm's understanding of quantum physics will revolutionize our technology." The USS Providence was next to dock. Captain Susan Rodriguez and Chief Petty Officer Daniel Clark were greeted by engineers eager to learn about the new resource extraction methods they had developed. "We didn't just solve a crisis," Rodriguez explained. "We established a relationship that will benefit both sides for generations." The USS Venture docked, and even the usually stern Captain Jack Moore was smiling as he disembarked. "I was wrong," he admitted to Lieutenant Kevin Wright. "Sometimes you don't need to fight to win." Wright grinned. "Just like in the best strategy games, the real victory is finding a path where everyone benefits." The USS Horizon was last to arrive before the EI flagship. Lieutenant Eric Johnson had piloted the small scout ship through dangerous conditions to maintain close observation of the swarm. "They're not monsters," he told the waiting officials. "They're just different. Once we found a way to communicate, everything changed." Finally, the USS Dauntless docked at the main station. Captain Miller led her crew down the ramp to where President Grant and the Federation ambassadors waited. Ambassador Zeltharian stepped forward, all 3 of his eyes focused on Miller. "Captain, the Federation Council has created a new position, in your honor. We call it the Human Initiative for Xenospecies Cooperation. We would like you to be its first director." Miller looked back at her crew, the young, brilliant problem solvers who had found a peaceful solution when the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy could not. "I'm honored, but this wasn't my achievement alone. Each person on my crew contributed essential ideas." President Grant nodded. "That's why we're not breaking up Training Fleet 7. Your 5 ships will become the core of our new diplomatic corps, with an expanded mission and upgraded vessels." Lieutenant Paul Howard's eyes lit up. "Upgraded vessels? The Federation has offered to enhance your ships with their technology, the president explained. The Dauntless and her sister ships will be the most advanced human vessels in space, while keeping their original character. A month later, Training Fleet 7, now officially renamed First Contact Fleet, gathered above Earth. The 5 ships had been refitted with Federation technology while maintaining their familiar designs. They looked the same from the outside, but their capabilities had been vastly improved. Captain Miller addressed the assembled crews via holographic communication. Each person could see her as if she stood before them, even though they were on different ships. "Our mission has changed," she said. "We were trained as defenders, but we've discovered that humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to fight. It's our ability to understand, to find common ground with those who seem different." Lieutenant Commander Watson spoke up from his position on the Dauntless Bridge. "Where are we heading first, Captain?" Miller smiled. "The Federation has detected unusual energy signatures from the Andromeda Galaxy. They suspect another silicon-based life form, but different from the swarm. They've asked us to make first contact." Dr. Bennett's voice came through from the USS Discovery. "Another entirely new form of intelligence to understand. This is why I joined the fleet." Captain Rodriguez from the Providence added, "And if they're hostile, we now know better than to start shooting." Miller looked at the stars on her view screen. Just a year ago, humanity had been alone, considered too primitive for contact by the Federation. Now they were leading the way into a new era of galactic diplomacy. "The Federation begged for help against an unstoppable enemy," she said quietly. "And Earth sent its weakest fleet, a group of young officers on old ships. But we had something the Federation didn't understand." "What was that, Captain?" asked Ensign Sanchez. "The knowledge that strength comes in many forms. Sometimes the strongest approach isn't to destroy what you don't understand, but to work harder to understand it." As First Contact Fleet prepared to depart Earth orbit, news broadcasts around the world reported on their new mission. Children looked up at the night sky, dreaming not of becoming warriors but of becoming explorers and diplomats like the crew of the Dauntless. The Federation had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humans, even when they send their weakest fleet. Because sometimes weakness in one area reveals strength in another. And humanity's greatest strength, their curiosity, creativity, and compassion, was exactly what the galaxy needed most. Lieutenant Howard checked the upgraded engines one last time. "All systems ready, Captain. The ships are performing at 200% above their original specifications." Captain Miller nodded. "First Contact Fleet, prepare for departure. Our next adventure is waiting. 5 ships, once considered outdated and weak, streaked away from Earth, carrying humans who had changed the definition of strength in the galaxy forever.